About 4 weeks ago, Rand Paul and Mike Lee and I sent a very short letter to Harry Reid. And we just said we intend to filibuster any legislation that undermines the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. Now, the timing of that letter was important. It was sent on the Friday before a 2-week recess, which meant every senator was going home to his or her states. And you had 2 weeks where that letter went out there, and this is where y'all made the difference. Because what happened in state after state after state is once that letter was out there, senators would go to their home states, they'd show up at a town hall, and men and women from their state would stand up and say, "Hey, why aren't you standing up for the Second Amendment? What's wrong with you? If these guys are fighting, what are you doing?" Now, I got to tell you, there are few things elected officials like less than getting heat from their constituents. And we had 2 weeks for the grassroots to get mobilized. Look, when we signed that letter, we understood to turn around this train, we needed a force larger than any group of senators in Washington. We needed the American people to get engaged. And that 2 week, you started seeing the heat turn up and up and up and up. We ended up getting 16 senators to join us on the letter. So it went from 3 to 16. And then you fast forward a little more. The first vote on the filibuster, we got 31 senators. Now at that point, all of the reporters said, "Okay, you guys have lost." And that shows what imbeciles you were. In fact, the Wall Street Journal wrote 2 op-eds bashing Rand and Mike and me for being imbeciles for fighting on this. Didn't we understand? And yet, you go forward to a week ago, when the votes came on the floor of the Senate. Every single proposal in President Obama's gun control agenda that would have undermined the Second Amendment, every single one of them was voted down on the floor of the Senate. I got to tell you, the look of shock from the senior Democrats, they were convinced they had won. And I got to tell you also, I don't know that there is an issue that has generated more heat internally in the Republican conference. We've had probably 5 or 6 lunches with a bunch of Republican senators standing up and looking at Rand and Mike and me and yelling at us at the top of their lungs. I mean, really upset. And they said, "Look, why did you do this? But as a result of what you did, when I go home, my constituents are yelling at me that I got to stand on principle." I'm really not making that up. And I don't even bother to argue with them. I just sort of let them yell and say, "Look, you know, vote your conscience." But look, there are a lot of people that don't like to be held accountable. But here was their argument. They said, "Listen, before you did this, the politics of it were great. The Dems were the bad guys, the Republicans were the good guys. Now we all look like a bunch of squishes." It's like, well, there is an alternative. You could just not be a bunch of squishes.